Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, Languages Are Fundamental, How Relationships Make Learning Fun and Human. I'm Sabrina Felice, and I'm delighted to be your host today on behalf of Clever Languages. Today's webinar is part of our ongoing collaboration with Central States Languages for All, which is inspired by their conference theme for this year, Languages Are Fundamental. We're proud to work together and create and celebrate innovative human-centered rich practices in the classroom. So, to help us officially open today's event, since we were talking about Central States, I'm excited to welcome Josh LaGrave, Coordinator of Digital Media and Marketing at Central States. So, Josh, thank you for joining us. I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for being here and taking time this evening to be part of what I am sure will be a fantastic webinar. As stated, my name is Josh LaGrave, and I'm the Coordinator of Digital Media and Marketing for Central States. If you are excited and energized about what we talk about tonight, we invite you to continue this conversation already next month in March in Chicago at our conference where the theme is Languages Are Fundamental. Registration online closes next week, February 15th, so make sure to get in and get the best rate you can by registering online before the conference. Otherwise, on-site registration at the beautiful historic Palmer House will be open as well the night before the conference. With that said, I am excited to hear what Diego has to share with us. And again, thank you for being here and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you very much, Josh. And of course, we have our amazing presenter for tonight, and it's my pleasure to introduce Diego Ojeda. He's a world language educator, presenter, and consultant known for his dynamic, joyful, and human centered approach to teaching. And with more than 30 years of classroom experience, Diego has inspired teachers across the country through workshops, keynote presentations, and collaborations with professional organizations. Diego, thank you so much for being here today again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. Thank you so much, Josh. And thank you so much also to CLED World Languages and Central States for another invitation to share with teachers. So welcome everyone. Let's get ready. I'm going to share the screen. So tonight we're going to talk about a topic that is different in the sense that we're really not talking about strategies and things that we can, um, you know, work with for a specific part of the curriculum. We're going to talk about relationships. We're going to talk about making learning fun, but mostly and most important, human. So it's kind of like this an invitation to think about the importance of relationships in our classes and how they actually have an influence in the way our students relate to not just to the class but also to their teachers, and not just to the class and the teachers but also to the cultures. And when I say cultures, I'm not just talking about the big cultures out there in the target language countries. When I talk about cultures, I'm talking about human groups that represent that specific group of people. So it can be friends who belong to the target language, um, to the country where the target language is spoken. It can refer to a state in the United States where there's a lot of people from that target culture. So when we talk about culture, sometimes we think about like in big terms. So good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Diego Ojeda, and I'm very grateful that you chose to spend some time with us this evening, Thursday evening in the middle of the spring school year. So this webinar comes from more than three decades, as Sabrina mentioned, in the classroom. I've been teaching for 33 years. And one recurring truth that I keep relearning is that language learning is now neutral. It's not neutral. Language learning, it's personal. Language learning is emotional. Language learning is deeply human. So when students feel connected to us, when they feel connected to each other and to the language, then learning accelerates, learning happens. So those three connections, remember, they feel connected to us, they feel connected to each other, and they feel connected to the language. Sometimes we are so concerned about having our students connected to the language and the culture that we cannot forget that it's as well very important that they are connected to each other. And yes, my friends, that's part of our responsibility in the classroom. How are we going to create an environment that is conducive for students to be connected with each other with respect and empathy? And that all depends on how we manage things in the classroom. But deep inside, learning a language is human. Um, Not even the best curriculum or the best strategies and the best intentions will bring us to what we are talking about here. Relationships are the most important things. And that's why our friends at Central States gave to this series of webinars the name of Languages Are Fundamental. Yes, they are fundamental, but they have to be also things that students can relate to and can connect to. Not always because the has to be always fun, but because relationships are the foundation that makes everything else possible. So this is the agenda and for tonight. And as I mentioned before, this is not about adding more strategies to your plate. It's about shifting how you see what is already happening in your classroom. We will start by naming why relationships are so important, why they matter so deeply in language classrooms and language acquisition, especially in the world we're teaching right now. It's not an easy world, as we know. And it's very important. This aspect is very important to kind of like survive in the world that we are teaching right now. Then we talk about safety, not as a buzzword, but safety as a real prerequisite for speaking and risk taking. So, do we create the conditions, the necessary conditions for the students to feel safe and to take risks? I have a conversation recently with a colleague, and he was telling me, you know what, these kids are so quiet. I don't know what to do, but they are so quiet. They don't say anything. And obviously, we try to see what's going on. But the question inside that concern is that do they feel that they can take risks in your class? Or do they feel that they better play safe, stay quiet, and just keep going and take the quiz and do the projects and do the homework, and that way they can pass the class? Mhm. So from there, we will look at student voice and how student voice changes the classroom dynamics, how authenticity impacts motivation. And finally, we land on concrete practices that you can use immediately. So, kind of like everyday practices to create this environment. So, tonight, everything that you see in the agenda is grounded in real classrooms, real students, and real constraints. Okay? All right, so let's talk about the outcomes. So this is working? Yeah. Okay. So again, my intention tonight is that I don't want you to leave thinking, oh, that was interesting, and then go back to your business as usual. I want you to leave with the tools that you can actually use, but also with a shift in mindset. Okay? Because the way we interpret student behavior changes, the way we respond structurally changes as well. I recently read, I'm going to try to remember what I read to make the quote exactly, something that said um, that situations that happen in real life are not that they happen because that's the way they should happen. That things that happen to us in life depend on how we see them, how each one of us see those situations. So X situation or Y situation can be a problem for someone, but can be an opportunity for someone else. So it's kind of like the same. The idea is that you can walk away today with some routines, with some frameworks, even some activities that I'm proposing them, and a very short implementation plan that you can use. But most important, with a clear understanding of how relationships shape language learning every single day, every single day. And that's not easy because we uh, are responsible for every single day. Those interactions in the classrooms are important every day. And sometimes it's hard because sometimes we don't have the mindset or the energy to interact in a very intentional way with our students. But those interactions that happen daily are the most important thing to, um, try to get to these real connections that we want to establish with our students. Okay, so in the chat, I have a question for you. How should students feel entering class? Now how they feel, we know how they feel. Mm, how they should feel entering the class? Please answer in the chat. Okay. Okay. All right. I'm going to give you a little more time. Okay. 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 This is very interesting. The answers that I'm getting here. So, relaxed, engaged, confident. Relax, engaged, confident. Welcome. Okay. Relax, engaged, confident, welcome. Okay. Excited, unperturbed. Okay. Excited to learn, confident, motivated and happy, safe, um, excited sometime, safe, going to a safe place, curious, comfortable, safe, motivated, relaxed, motivated, comfortable. Okay. Curious. Okay. Happy. Okay. Students should feel confident, relaxed, and social. So it's interesting to see, yes, many of us have kind of like the same answers, but some of us have different type of answer. And again, as I said before, we all see things in a different light. And our experience and our experiences have a direct influence of the answer that you're giving right now. So pretty much relaxed, engaged, curious, and confident. Okay. So I agree. Students should not arrive to class scared um, about what's gonna happen there. So those are very, very good answers that make us realize what kind of relationships are we establishing in our classes. Your answers are telling me what you're looking for in your classes as far as relationships goes. Okay. So I'm very happy to see all those answers that I just read here because I think we are on the same page. So this activity called emotional entry check, I'm going to share with you in the chat. So in the chat, I'm going to put a link, and please open that link right away and leave it open in the browser so you can take a look at that later because you're not going to be able to copy and paste from Zoom. So this emotional entry check, the purpose is, oops, to emotional entry check is a short, predictable routine designed to acknowledge students as humans before asking them to perform linguistically. Okay, to acknowledge students as humans before asking them to perform linguistically. Its goal is to lower the affective filter and signal emotional safety without forcing disclosure. Okay? When to use it? At the very beginning of class, first 2 minutes, daily or several times per week, especially effective on Mondays, after breaks, or before speaking heavy sessions. So here is the activity that I recommend and that I'm going to share with you so you can take a look later uh, and work and use as an emotional entry check with your students. So let's see, how can I todos aquí? Okay, I'm gonna put it in the chat. So from the chat, please open that link so you have this activity open in your browser. Okay, all right. So the big claim. So this slide, it's the heart of the entire webinar. See, language learning is a human experience before it is an academic one. So language learning, before being an academic experience, should be or is a human experience. When students feel that they belong, their affective filters lowers. And that's why in that activity that I just shared with you, we talk about the affective filter. Do they feel safe? Okay. When that filter lowers, they are willing to take risks in the class. And attention, it doesn't mean that they are going to take risks that are perfect. The real risks are imperfect because we're trying something, right? We don't know where it's going to go. So we're going to make a lot of mistakes, but we should celebrate that they are trying to take those risks. When they take risks, they communicate. They try to establish that communication, okay, in the classroom. And communication supported by meaningful and comprehensible input is what leads to acquisition. Again, communication plus comprehensible input results in acquisition, which is what we want in our classes, right? But if the students, if they don't feel safe enough to speak, nothing else downstream can compensate for that. Okay? No activity, no pacing guide, no assessment trick is going to work if the students don't feel safe enough. So remember, risk taking creates communication, and communication fuels acquisition. Now, when we talk about comprehensible input, we're talking about not just using the right words, using in the United States a lot of cognates, but we are also talking about using gestures, using pictures, images, even using tone of voice, using humor. So those things, create communication. And we provide this to our students, then they know that they feel that they can also try to communicate, which we're taking a huge step here. So, why relations are fundamental? So, relationships uh, equal the hidden curriculum. Okay, so we spent an enormous amount of time talking about curriculum maps, standards, and pacing guides. But there's another curriculum happening every single day, whether we plan it or not, the emotional curriculum. Hmm? Students are constantly asking themselves questions like, do I belong here? Is it safe to try? Does my voice matter? Am I going to make a mistake? Are they going to make fun of me? Am I looking okay? Am I sounding okay? So the answers to those questions determine how much language they're willing to use. Again, the answer to these questions, do I belong here? It is safe to try. Does my voice matter? The answer to those questions determine how much language they're willing to use because they are roadblocks for them. They make them quiet in the class. So, as you see in the image, relationships are the container that hold everything else. And that's why relationships are fundamental. Relationships are the hidden curriculum. Yes, I'm not saying that curriculum or standards or pacing guides are not important, my friends. Please don't go to ACFL saying that Diego Ojeda said that. But I, after 33 years teaching and 25 of them in the United States, Spanish language at the middle school level and high school level and college level and community level, um, I can say honestly, the moment you have that relationship with your students, you can ask them to do anything, anything. They even will feel bad when they don't perform at the level that they know that we want them to perform. So that's why it's so important to consider relationships as a very important part of the curriculum. Okay? All right. So the fundamental equation. Okay, what is this, Señor Ojeda? So this equation, trust, risk-taking, communication, explains why two teachers can use the same textbook and get completely different results. Okay? You know that happens. That has happened to you and that has happened to me. Same textbook, very different results. Trust comes first. Without trust, students protect themselves. They get into the shell. Without trust, but with trust, they try. Okay? Trying, risk taking leads to communication, and communication feeds the brain with usable input. Obviously, we need to talk about also context, contextualization. When we talk about comprehensible input, we're not just talking about using the things that they will understand plus a little more. We are also talking about bringing a context that they're familiar with and that they can connect with. So over time, that's how language grows. Investing in trust doesn't slow learning down, it accelerates. So this is the fundamental equation for language risk. More input results in growth over time. All right. So for this section, I created this activity that is called Trust first, talk later. Trust first, talk later. An activity that is a per rehearsal activity. So let me put this a little bigger because for some reason it looks very small. It might be my age. Okay, so the routine builds trust before public speaking by giving students a protected rehearsal space. It reframes speaking as preparation, not performance. It reframes speaking as preparation, not performance. When to use it? Before whole group sharing, before oral assessments, during discussion based lessons. So we usually assign a project where students have to present about a specific topic they share with the group. We assign conversations, oral assessments, and they prepare, and then X day, everyone is presenting. But slow down. We need to build trust first. Okay? So this activity will give us the opportunity to build that trust here. The key is here. Before whole group sharing, before oral assessments, and during discussion based lessons. Sometimes we feel that we have to go so fast. I also teach the AP class, and many teachers ask me, what is the pacing? The pacing, the textbook that we're using has so many readings. How many readings do you do per week? And it's not about how many, it's about how you do these readings. In the chat, I'm going to put the link to this activity that you can take a look at later. So in the chat, trust first, talk later. So for everyone here, okay, this is a little present for today, February 5th. Okay, perfect. So we talk about engagement versus belonging versus proficiency. Wow, okay, big words, right? So engagement, of course, it's important, but often, very often, is temporary. It depends on two things. It depends on the novelty of whatever we're bringing to the class, or it depends on the energy that the students or even the teacher have at some point. So, engagement, we know this can be temporary. Um, it is impossible, to really have a class engage 100% every day. We know that we're human, okay? That's why we, instead of talking about engagement, we talk about belonging, because belonging is deeper. Belonging is what keeps a student participating on difficult days. They feel part of the same. We have the same mission here. So it doesn't matter if it's a high energy day or a low energy day. It's like having a family. Not because one day you didn't sleep well, that means that you're going to treat like crap the rest of your family for that day. No, what happens is that in our families, we have and we feel belonging. We belong to the family. And hopefully, we feel that we belong to our neighborhood and we apply the same. And hopefully, that we feel that we belong to our city, our state, our country, the world. But sometimes we just work with the little microcosmos, right? But remember, engagement can be temporary. Belonging creates something that really stays there for longer. Belonging is deeper. Belonging is what keeps students participating again on very difficult days, not just fun ones. And that's why we can get frustrated if we cannot have our students having fun every day. That's not the goal. We try to have our students having fun every day. We're gonna burn ourselves as teachers. That happened to me. And when I share these things, it's because 95% of the things that I'm sharing happened to me. And I can tell you exactly when this happened. I was teaching middle school in the state of Wisconsin in a public school. And all I brought to my class was games, 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 games. And that didn't go anywhere. You know, I didn't feel that there was acquisition at that time. But I heard so many things about games and more games that I thought that was the way to do it. Okay. So proficiency is not something that students wake up thinking about. We think about proficiency, but not them. But it develops naturally when belonging sustains consistent practice over time. Proficiency is the byproduct, not the starting point. Proficiency is the byproduct, not the starting point. Okay? Okay, perfect. Let's keep moving. So, here we talk about motivations meets relationships. Many of you are very familiar with autonomy. And if you have attended my previous webinars, I have talked about autonomy. And if you have not, I invite you to go to the Cledward Languages YouTube channel. There are at least 3 webinars dedicated to motivation at different levels. Some webinars are in Spanish, some webinars are in English. But we talk about motivation in the World Language Classroom. So, uh, some of you or many of us are very familiar with autonomy, with mastery, and purpose. Those are the 3 pillars that drives motivation. And this is according to Daniel Pink, right? So, what we don't always say aloud is that none of these survive in a threatening environment. Autonomy requires safety. Again, the ability to take risks. Mastery requires permission to be imperfect. If we are expecting our students to be 100% perfect from the beginning, mastery is not going to happen. And purpose requires that human connection. Okay? Relationships are not separate from motivation. They are what make motivation possible in the first place. Again, always let's try to think about our daily life. Always let's try to think about what drives us in our real life. What motivates us to get closer to someone that we like. Okay? Motivation meets relationships. All right. So, another question for you in the chat, or not a question, but please complete the sentence. Fill in the blank. My students shut down most often when my students shut down most often when. Okay, I'm gonna read you. Okay. No one is judging anyone here. Let's just, be honest. It's not about saying you're right, you're wrong. No. Let's just share. This is our daily life, guys. No one is perfect. Okay. So let's see what we have here. So the question again. My students shut down most often when they are confused. Has happened to me. When I lecture. Yes, has happened to me too. When they feel pressure. Yes, of course. When they overthink the product required. See, and that can be the result of their previous experiences. They come with previous experiences to our classes. When they feel scared, when they are afraid to make mistakes, I have them practice speaking. Oh, okay, so they shut down when you have them practice speaking. When asked to talk in the target language, when they don't understand what is going on and they don't know how to answer, and when they are asked to do something they still don't understand, they have to complete and read aloud their own sentences. When they are tired, when the focus is lecture only, when they don't know what to do, when they are bored. Okay, thank you so much for sharing these honest answers. And see how so many things of those situations that you are describing there can be fixable through what we have talked to this point of the webinar. And I know that you're not taking notes, okay? But maybe we would like to watch again at our own pace the webinar and then take some specific notes here and there of things that you want to do a little different in the classroom and that you think will work, okay? So we're in the United States of America, of course. See? So we need to be very honest about the context that we're teaching in. We are in the United States, and students ask what they should learn a language when Google Translate exists. Why do we have to learn? I have Google Translate. They live in a performance driven culture. And many of those participations that you just had in the chat reflect that they live in a performance driven culture full of grades. So they always have the grade in mind, full of pressure and full of anxiety. And true, this is unfortunately true for students in the United States. Other cultures might have some of these issues as well. Other cultures can be totally different, but this is the reality in the United States, and this influences um, our students' performance, attitudes in the classrooms. Many students chase points instead of growth because that's what the system has taught them. You're here for good grades, and you're not going to go to a good college if you don't have good grades. You're not going to get pizza on Friday if you don't get good grades. My dad and my mom used to give us pizza every Friday upon showing them our weekly uh, school bulletin grades. And Senor Ojeda was so bad at math that I was always having a very bad grade in math, and therefore there was no pizza thanks to me. But we were grades driven. So many students, as I said, chase points instead of growth because performance feels safer than participation. Hmm? A relationship centered classroom doesn't ignore this reality. It responds by shifting the focus from being right to being involved. Changing the focus from being right to be involved. When I have students, a group of students, for the first time, they have not been my students in the past. And when we are conversing in the class about something we're doing, and suddenly one student feels safe to talk and participate, but this student, the other students know that this student is not as good when they try to speak Spanish. Then the student starts talking, and I'm like, of course, sí, claro, por supuesto. And all the students look at me, kind of like telling me, but he's making mistakes. How can I not stop him or her and tell him or her the right way to express whatever they have to express? Because I have shifted the focus from being right to being involved. So that way, we also lower that anxiety that the United States student can show. So, you know that CLED World Languages has a program for Spanish, French, I believe also for German, that is called Reporteros. And I try to find alignment between reporteros and what I'm bringing to this webinar. So when we're talking about relationships, when we're talking about the importance of me and making mistakes, in Lección Uno, todo sobre mí means everything about me. So we look at greetings, introduction, basic personal information. And the reporteros are real people who you can find in different lessons. So in this lesson, Dana or Dana introduces herself through a video. So the idea is to create that context that will allow the students to feel connected to whatever we are working in the classroom. It's not something different what they see in the textbook. Okay, next section, safety before performance. So what safe space quotation means. When I say safe space, I don't mean easy to understand. I mean a space where mistakes don't cost dignity. So um, a safe space, sometimes we think that should be a space where we're so nice to the kids that mm, we make it really easy to the point that sometimes we are speaking in the target language and we end up translating everything that we just said in the target language. Hola chicos, buenos días, ¿cómo están? Good morning kids, how are you? Ok, hoy vamos a hablar sobre la naturaleza. Today we're talking about nature. So we make it easy for them, right? Sometimes we think that that safe space means, you know what? They can sit wherever they want. See? They can move and they can talk and say whatever whenever they want. Unstructured space. But when I talk about safe space, it's a space where students can make mistakes, but it's not going to cost their dignity. In other words, I'm not going to put them in a situation that they're going to feel embarrassed. Space where restarting is normal and effort is value. So we restart constantly and we value that effort. When we talk about participation, and some people grade participation. I do not grade participation. I believe that sometimes we end up grading discipline instead of participation. When we grade participation, are we giving a good grade to those who keep making mistakes but who have some effort, or we have a specific bar for those students? Okay, they have great effort, but they're not excellent, so their participation grade is 85% or B or B plus. So it's not about lowering the expectations, it's creating the conditions where students are willing to meet them. So that's the safe space, creating the conditions that students are willing to meet those expectations that we have in the class. Safe to try, safe to be wrong, safe to restart, safe to be yourself. Okay? All right. So, community, and we talk about community and we talk about control. We sometimes confuse good classroom management with silence. So, and usually administrators confuse that very easily. They think that if they walk by a classroom that is quiet, that means that the teacher has excellent classroom management, right? But guess what? When we talk about language classes, we realize that silence is not engagement. In a strong classroom, in a strong classroom communities, what happens? There is talk, there is laughter, there's negotiation of meaning. So, yeah, in an structured way, we are loud. See, communication is happening. So, usually, language classes that are very quiet are classes where the worksheet is the most important thing, and usually students are just writing answers on a piece of paper. A real language class that uh, you know has acquisition as their main goal is a class, again, where there's talk, where there's laughter, and where there is negotiation as well, negotiation of meaning. So discipline issues decrease not because students fear the consequences, but because they care about the space and the people in it. It's really moving when you see this happening in your classrooms. Um, when you see that students understand that we respect each other, we listen to the other, we pay attention, not because of the fear of consequences, disciplinary consequences, but because they feel part of a community where they feel safe. Okay? So the goal is not silence, the goal is engaged communication. Fewer issues because students care. Okay. So the teacher is the thermostat. And now that is so cold here in Kentucky, it's like 14 grades still today. So we talk about the teacher as the thermostat. Student read us before they hear us. So they read us immediately before they hear us. And we think that the idea that students have about us is because of what we say and how we say it to them, right? But no, no, they have this ability to read us even before they hear what we have to say. So, our tone, body language, pacing, and consistency are always sending messages about safety in the classroom. Our tone of voice, see, is it welcoming? Is it empathetic? Or is it strong and sometimes a little too strong? See, our body language, do we always stay in one place, standing there in front of them? Or do we walk, you know, and make little comments here and there when they are working in the class? The pacing of the class, are we the teachers who constantly remind them that we need to do this because pretty soon we're going to start with this and this? Like, for example, we need to make sure that we know perfectly the present tense because next week we're going to start the imperfect tense. And then after that, we're going to study the differences between the preterite and the imperfect. And remember, this is not only the only past tense in Spanish, because then we're going to have to study other past tenses. Okay, so the pacing, the pacing, the pacing, and that consistency. So they all send messages about safety. The students are reading those things about the teacher. On days when energy is low, predictability matters more than enthusiasm. Consistency tells students, you are safe here even today. Okay? So we are the thermostat in the classroom. Okay, co-created norms protect dignity. So when I say this, what I'm saying here is that when norms are imposed, students comply. Impose their norms, their job is to comply with the norms, right? When norms are, or rules, we call them rules too, are co-created, then students protect them and they remind each other about those norms that we co-created. So short, positive agreements like we support risk taking become emotional rail guards that make communication possible and protect student dignity. So when you think about creating norms or creating rules for your classes, remember short positive agreements. We support risk taking, these kind of things. Okay. Again, I come from different experiences in my teaching life. Yes, I was the teacher who used to have like 3 pages of rules, starting with no gum chewing and not going to the restroom at this point. Very punitive, you know? And thanks God, I was able to change that approach. Okay. Okay. So we build together ownership in the classroom. Feedback without fear. So overcorrection, we know, teaches a student to monitor themselves instead of communicating. That's why um, many of our students who have not been in our kind, nice classes, they're always so unsure about saying, uttering something in the target language because they're constantly monitoring themselves. Did I use the right grammar? Did I do the right conjugation? Did I see this and that? So they're more concerned about that than communicating. And our classes should be about worrying about communication. So recasting allows conversation to continue while still providing rich input. So recasting is the students trying to say something and you support that student, kind of like agreeing with what the student said, but obviously you're the teacher. You're gonna say it in probably in a better way, but that recasting is so important for the brain because without having to say, hey, you're wrong, this is the way you should say it, the brain, when you recast, is filing those corrections. Later, patterns can be addressed collectively without putting any one student on the spot. So I always suggest this. Let's never put any student on the spot. Let's see what are the common mistakes. And then one day we address these common mistakes as a class and we give examples as a class. So no one will feel on the spot. Also, so feedback without fear. Remember that. Another important point is, but before that, I have an activity. Mistake friendly feedback loop. Okay, mistake friendly feedback loop. Okay, what is this about? Purpose. This routine maintains communication flow while still providing rich, accurate input. It separates learning from embarrassment. When to use? During interpersonal speaking tasks, class discussions, partner or group conversations. So these are the goals of this activity that I'm going to share right now on the chat for you guys to take a look and try in your classroom. Okay, here we go. There you go. So everyone should get it. For those who just got here, the idea is that you open this in your browser and then save that link because you're not able to copy and paste from Zoom. Okay, so let's keep in mind that grades should not intimidate our students. Grades are powerful emotional messages to our students when they are used as punishment. Okay? When they are used as punishment, students shut down. And then they remember that they have been labeled as a C, B, or A student. Unfortunately, many students come with that mindset to our classes, knowing that they're not going to get more than a C or more than a B. Or I think worse, when they come to our classes thinking, I'm the best one. I'm the one who always gets the A plus. Hmm? So when the grades are used as information and we can justify why this is great, we have to work with the system. When we use rubrics, we sit down with the student and see here in this part, you didn't talk about that personal connection that I want you to make with the topic that you were presenting about. So that's, according to the rubric here, -2 points. Students understand that, okay? And then we talk about the topic of chances, retakes. I'm so open to retakes all the time. Even projects, if they have to present a project and they didn't get what they wanted, Senor, can I do it again? Yes, and that probably can means that I'm gonna have to spend some time with the student while we're not in class. But this is language. This is relationships. And if the student is concerned about getting a better result, that will translate into better acquisition because they're going to dedicate more time. So, why not give them the chance to retake language assessments, no matter what type of language assessment? They, at the end, they're going to be practicing the language more than if we just stop at the grade that they had in the test or the project. The way that we talk about grades matters as much as the grades themselves. So let's not be the teacher who's talking about grades in a way that, um, you know, can scare them. So things like, for example, guys, this exam is going to be very challenging. Historically, my groups have not average more than a B plus in this assessment. I'm not exaggerating, my friends. I have heard this from teachers in other subjects as well. See, where the grade becomes this thing that, instead of using it to help the student, intimidates them. Okay. So again, we're talking about relationships. That's why, so many different aspects in the classroom. So we talk about the 6 community killers. So each one of these practices sends the same quiet message: protect yourself. Over competition increases anxiety. So this is a very competitive culture in the United States. And that's why I thought when I started teaching here that contests and games were the best way. But that over competition creates a lot of anxiety, and usually also happens that the same students are the ones who are always winning. Sarcasm erodes trust. So this makes me remember or reminds me of the movie The Wall by Pink Floyd. We don't need no education. And the teacher was very sarcastic with their students. Sometimes we confuse sarcasm with humor. But what happens is that sarcasm is humor that only makes the sarcastic person laugh. One size tasks exclude learners. So, yes, we need to create different types of tasks, different types of assessments. Teacher centered task dominates. Okay. So, these are community killers um, that each one of these practices sends the same quiet message: protect yourself, protect yourself, be aware. Okay. And when the students are protecting themselves, they stop speaking, there's silence, they are quiet. Removing even one of these can dramatically shift classroom dynamics and participation. So, again, the Reporteros Uno alignment with these topics that I was talking about in this part of the webinar. There are recurring structures across units. There are chat conversations, mensajes de voz, blog posts, and the grammar integration happens uh, in context, inside communication, meaning first before accuracy. So the students know what to expect. And I like the way it is organized in the Reporteros program because it again lowers that affective filter and that stress. Okay. Center student voice. Okay. So voice is a stance in the language class. Okay. Student voice is not an activity that we add on Fridays, meaning Conversation Friday. That's when we're going to hear our students. No. Students' voice is a stance. So student voice is not an activity that we add just on Fridays or whatever day of the week we decided that we were going to do speaking. It's a stance. It's the belief that students are not passive recipients of language, so that they are active users of the language. When the students in our classes have a voice, engagement and communication flow in a natural way. Let's allow them to have a voice, not be passive recipients. Voice again drives engagement. Voice again drives communication. But we need to be willing to listen to their voices in many aspects. Their voice is not just the way they are using phonetically the language. Their voice is also what they want to talk about, what is important at a specific moment at school, in their lives, in our communities. And sometimes we don't allow those spaces to hear their voices. So remember, voice is a stance. I hear my phone, but okay, I didn't know where it was. I'm sorry. Okay, then we talk about equity lens. Whose voice is missing here? Okay, so equity doesn't mean waiting for quieter students to become braver. Equity means designing participation structures that make speaking safer and more predictable for everyone. Who speaks, who retreats, and who disappears are all the signals can act on. So notice who speaks the most, notice who retreats, plan structures for balance, and ask yourself who is unseen. That's the equity lens that we need to bring to our class, because we always have students who speak the most, students who retreat in our classes, and sometimes it's not equitable, and we don't create that environment to allow those quiet or those students who retreat to participate in the same meaningful way that the others do. Of course, our expectation can be different, for each one of these students. And that's why we plan those structures to balance that equity, seeing our classes with the equity lens. So, structures that protect quieter students. One of the biggest myths we carry is that confident speakers are naturally confident, and quiet students just need to come out of their shell. I have heard that so many times. Oh, it's confident in the language class because it's just the personality of the student. And this student, well, they just need to come out of their shell. And that's not how classrooms work. Hmm? Participation is not a personality trait. And remember, we talked about participation before. I mentioned that sometimes we use participation grades as discipline grades. So participation is not a personality trait. In other words, if we grade participation, we can take a look and see that those getting the higher scores in participation are those who are very upbeat, confident, that speak up all the time and raise their hand all the time. So um, participation is a design outcome. When we build in personal rehearsals, in rotating rows, and moments where everyone speaks at once, we are not lowering expectations. On the contrary, we are removing unnecessary social risk. So over time, students don't participate more. They begin to trust themselves as speakers because the instructors has their back. This is kind of like a little repeat of what I said at the beginning, but more focus on that aspect of the participation. For that, I have this activity called Everyone Speaks at Once. So, Everyone Speaks at Once is about. This structure removes performance hierarchy by ensuring all students speak simultaneously in short, safe bursts. Remember, quiet classrooms are dead classrooms. When to use discussion warm-ups, mid-lesson energy reset, processing after input. And here I have the description of the activity that is going to help our quiet students feel part of that community and take the risk to communicate. In the chat, I'm going to put the link to this activity. Okay, please save those links because I cannot guarantee that you're going to see this after the webinar. Okay, please save those links. I mean, if you are interested, not that you have to, right? Okay, so identity safe prompts. Humanizing instruction also means being careful about how we invite our students to share. Hmm? So offer choice, not force disclosure. Why? Because not every student wants or needs to disclose personal information to feel connected. Sometimes after the summer, we want each one of them to tell us what they did over the summer. But you know what? Sometimes students don't want, or they just don't need to. For them, that can be very personal information and things that maybe we cannot see. For example, um, what if most of the students went to the beach and a student just stayed home? So that student is not going to feel safe sharing that he or she stayed home because you know what? The rest of them are cooler. They went to the beach. Okay. So not every student wants or needs to disclose personal information to feel connected. Choice is protection. Choice makes it safe. When students can decide how they respond, they stay authentic without feeling exposed. In other words, we don't want the cookie cut kind of like student. Okay? They stay authentic without feeling exposed. Using flexible language around family experiences and identity isn't about being politically correct. It's about ensuring that no student has to tap out of communication to protect their dignity. So, autonomy protects dignity, and we need to be aware of that. We cannot ask the same for each one of the students. Seeing students speak. So, students do not need grand praise, you know, they need to be noticed. A quiet comment like, for example, I saw you take a risk today, or you stay in Spanish longer than last week, carries enormous weight to our students. Celebrating small wins. I'm very familiar with this idea of celebrating small wins because my daughter has Down syndrome and autism. And you should see the kind of wins that are celebrated at this household. Probably things that for the rest of the humanity and people who doesn't have this kind of like disability are just regular, normal things. Taking the toothbrush and trying to brush their teeth. Taking a Kleenex when they feel a little sick and try to clean themselves. If we do this with our kids, with our own sons and daughters and the people we love, we need to remember that celebrating small wins in our classrooms is as important, and they carry such beautiful weight and motivation that the students uh, will feel different and they will want to keep going and keep communicating. Okay? These micro moments tell students that effort matters. You're telling them, you know what, effort matters, not just fluency. And when students feel seen or trying, not just for being right, they are far more willing to keep speaking. So this is why this is all connected, languages and human relationships. Notice effort, not perfection. Okay, the co-created classroom space. I know I'm taking too long, so I'm almost done. Okay. When students walk into the classroom, they immediately know who it belongs to. Why? Because the walls are a reflection of who we are. So, in that sense, the students become visitors to our own space. So, we need to allow co creation of the classroom space, my friends. And something that I do every year is that when they come to the classroom, the first day of class, walls are empty. So some of them think that I'm just too lazy and I didn't decorate like the other teachers, right? But then I ask them, you need to bring something that is meaningful to you and that we can hang here on the wall. Okay? Oh, senor, but you know, I just got a car and that's so important to me. I cannot bring the car to hang on the wall. Yeah, but you can bring a picture of your car, right? Or your pet. Okay, so we co create that space. Um, if the walls don't reflect us, students become visitors again in someone else's space. But when their words, stories, and work live on the walls, something shifts, something changes. The classroom becomes a shared environment, not a stage. And it's so true. Then the other classes come and they see the pictures of the kids from the other class, and they remember that they were sharing a class in middle school or elementary school, and they remember when that student really liked that book because there's a picture of a book. Oh, Senor, was that Elizabeth who brought that picture? Yeah, Elizabeth Relich. She brought that picture. How do you know? Ah, because she was obsessed with that book in elementary school. Okay? So we are co-creating that space. That sense of ownership quietly fuels participation because the students feel like they belong in the room, not just to the class. They belong. Okay? The artifact of the week. So this is a very powerful routine because it builds connection without pressure. So students bring something meaningful, a photo, an object, a memory, and share it briefly with a partner. No performances, no spotlights, just meaning. Language becomes a bridge between people rather than academic hurdle. So it doesn't matter what class you're teaching. This seems like an activity that is appropriate for elementary school kids, but in fact, this is good for any class. The artifact of the week and bring it and let them share in little groups with other students. This is not a graded activity. Okay. All right. So the reporteros alignment with these aspects that I was sharing with you right now. En la lección somos así. This is how we are. ¿Hablas español? So the communication goes expressing likes and dislikes, describe personality traits, talk about languages and identity. I really like the way the Reporteros program brings the topic of identity through these things. Identity. You usually don't see much the issue or topic of identity in other textbooks until they get to the AP class. Suddenly, in the AP class, we start talking about identity. But we can start talking about identity from level one. Okay. All right. Okay. So there are some activities that the program proposes as well, and a cultural part that ties very well with what I was presenting. All right, my friends, I know I have to hurry up. Okay, now from artificial to real, the invisible light bulb. Okay, so students might not always articulate this, but they know when something feels artificial. Language teachers, sometimes we are so concerned about are they having fun that we don't bring our real selves to the class and we become a little artificial. Students feel it when tasks cease only to practice a structure and then disappear 5 minutes later. So we kind of like act in a certain way just because we have the purpose to practice a specific structure. But then that is not you, it's not part of your personality, then we just move on. So when that happens, the energy from the room drains. Real learning lights up, and that's why this is called the invisible light bulb. Real learning lights up when students see relevance. Why is the teacher bringing this to the class in that way? Is it relevant or not? When language connects with people, with stories or purposes beyond the work paper, I'm not going to say work SHEET because my accent will make me say something different. Okay? So, one very powerful question that we need to ask ourselves is very simple. What feels artificial here and why? And that's something that maybe we need to change. Okay? What is artificial in here? Real context creates motivation. Context beats perfect form. So language doesn't grow because we are correcting every mistake. It grows because the brain had something meaningful to organize, because it mattered. The brain had something meaningful to organize language around. So context gives students a reason to speak before they are ready. And that's exactly when acquisition happens. Remember, context gives students a reason to speak before they are ready. And we want them ready so they can speak. But doesn't work that way. See? Acquisition happens when we're motivated through context and is relevant, not just to them, but also to us. And they see that you're not being artificial, you're being real, and that matters to you as well. A perfection mindset shuts mouths, okay? A meaning first mindset opens them. Accuracy will come later, but only if communication is allowed to happen first. Communication. Let's allow communication to happen first, then accuracy will knock on the door. Okay? Perfection mindset blocks speaking. Culture depth, not decoration. Okay. So, culture is not flags, it's not food, it's not holidays paced into a specific unit of instruction. It's how people sees the world, what we know in the AP language as perspectives. It's how people makes decisions and assign value to things. One culture assigns value to something that the other culture doesn't. When culture is treated as a decoration, when we're more concerned about flags, food, and holidays, students consume trivia. When it's treated as perspective, then it's cultural understanding. Students then develop empathy because they see how cultures work. Our goal is not cultural coverage, it's cultural understanding. And understanding always will go deeper, like in the picture that I have there, than surface level facts. So, culture depth, not decoration. Build empathy, not trivia. All right. Purpose through real audiences. So, the moment the students realize that their words are going to be heard by someone real, everything changes. So, effort increases and attention sharpens. Language stops being an exercise and becomes a contribution, whether it's a micro interview, a message to a partner class, or a small service project. Real audiences give students a reason to care. I love what one of my teachers at my school does. I always see her at least once or twice a week. She teaches middle school, and I see her coming with her students from lower school or elementary school. She finds audience for her students, and that is a game changer. Okay. And I have an activity that is called Real Audience Small Scale. So I'm just going to share it right now because I know that I need to finish. Oh my gosh. Oh, I need to finish as soon as possible. So I'm going to share this activity here. Paste. Okay. Okay. I hope you got it. Yeah, I think I sent it to everyone. All right, my friend. So let's just don't write it in the chat. In one sentence, describe one real audience your students could have this year. Oh, yeah, write it in the chat. Describe one real audience your students could have this year, even a small one. So let's think about an audience for them. Who can be their audience? So it's relevant language to them. Friends, okay, in the class or other Spanish class, yeah. Next year students, other classes, parents, elementary school kids, family, younger children, their parents, ELL students, family, friends, neighbors, pets. Oh man, pets. Okay. Usually this audience, we choose an audience that will be able to understand what they want to communicate. Store clerk, ESOL students, college parents, the mirror. Okay. Thank you for your answers, but just keep in mind, having an audience is quite important for our students. Okay, so curriculum center vs student center planning. So student center planning doesn't mean abandoning rigor or standards. It means being responsive instead of rigid. Okay? It means knowing when to slow down, when to extend, and when to let students linger in meaning. Teaching the same lesson the same way every year might feel efficient, but it ignores the human sitting in front of us. My friends, I know you're going to say, oh, yeah, Ojeda, sure. But I have never given the same lessons in 33, 34 years of instruction, to the point where I have never given the same quizzes or the same project description. I always do it new every year. And yes, my drive is full of folders for each year, for each class each year, because I usually have 4 different classes this or preps. I do this not because I don't have anything else to do, but because the humans that I have in front of me are always different. And yeah, it wouldn't be cool to have just your lessons on a binder and you just open the binder on day 30 and then you do it this year and then next year and then the following year. Could be, might give you more time, right? But then you're gonna remind me my teacher Aldemar Garcia. When I was a student in Colombia, he was a social studies teacher, and he will come to class with his briefcase, put the briefcase on the table, open it, and there was a stack of yellow papers, and he will take the corresponding day and put it on the desk and give me that lesson. He didn't care about how different we were from the students the year before. I always say that the class needs to be kind of like an electrocardiogram. So great classes have peaks and dips. We need to change the mode every 10 to 15 minutes. We need to mix it up. We need interaction. We need reflection. A flat line means disengagement. And worse, a flat line in medicine means death. So the class as an electrocardiogram. So for these things that I'm sharing with you, Reporteros program has mini projectors that students really connect with, and where we can hear their voices. So each unit has like two mini projectors, and they walk you through the mini projectors, and then a proyecto final. I really like that because talking about saving some time, these mini projectors and projectors save you a lot of time in the classroom. Okay, as well as cultural documents. Sorry, that was a little fast. Okay, these are some examples of the projects in the Reporteros One program. Okay, so practices you can use tomorrow to finish. So the 10 signature practices. This is a lot of what we just mentioned this afternoon or this evening. Door greeting and micro choice. Don't forget to always stand by the door and greet them. Even greet those who have to go to other classes and are not your students. 2 minutes check in, recast routine, artifact of the week, choice board tasks. So we um, motivate autonomy. Tracker badges. If you are big on badges, students like those little badges that show them visually, physically their progress. Per rehearsal before sharing. Always allow them to rehearse with their friends, with other classmates before sharing to the whole class. Everyone speaks at once protocols. So how can we do this in a positive way and not chaos? Identity, safe prompts, real audience, and micro tasks. Okay, these are 10 signature practices that will allow us to um, bring this humanity to our classrooms. The three pillars uh, of the language classroom: belonging, routines that create emotional safety, voice structures create equitable participation, and real purpose tasks create meaning and relevance. A refined framework. 1 week implementation plan. On day one, greeting and feelings prompt. Day two, co-create norms. Day three, artifacts and captions. Day four, real talk tasks. And day five, mini language cafe. All right, perfect. The closing message, my friend. We teach languages by building communities because every voice matters. Every story belongs. And thank
Yeah,
you.
I think that is it. So, once again, just want to thank everyone for their attendance and for being here until the very last minute. Thank you once again, Diego, for the great presentation, friendly
Thank you so much,
reminder.
Sabrina. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and hope you all have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.